For tonight's public meeting. Formal comment session is your opportunity to provide comments for the record that you want TCEQ staff and ultimately the TCEQ commissioners to consider before making any final decisions on this application. As a reminder, during this part of the meeting, you will not receive a response to your comments in the moment. Rather, the comments you provide during this part of the meeting get combined with all the written comments that have been submitted on this application and will get responded to in one written document called the Executive Director's Response to Public Comment. Everyone who's on the mailing list will receive a copy of that response to comments. The mailing list includes those folks who provided comments either in writing or if you provide comments here tonight during the formal comment session. Right now I have 45 individuals who have signed up to speak. Therefore, you will have 3 minutes to provide your comments here tonight, and that'll be a hard 3 minutes. At 1 minute, I will give you a 1 minute warning. Thusly, at 3 minutes, I'll call time. You'll need to stop and then give your neighbor an opportunity to have their turn. If 3 minutes is not enough time for you, you can go out to the registration table, grab a piece of paper, and write the rest of your comments down on a piece of paper. Written comments carry the same weight as oral comments. I'm going to call you up in groups so that you'll be ready to go. When you hear me call your name, come on up and get in line. And then when it's your turn, you'll state your name for the record. Even though you hear me call your name, we'll state your name for the record. If I mispronounce your name, I apologize in advance. 46. All right. Our first group, we'll start with Ferdinand Gonzel, Mary Lee Williams, Courtney McDowell, and Robert Kuhn. Ferdinand. Is Ferdinand here? All right, we can come back to Ferdinand. Mary Lee Williams. Mary Lee? All right. Go ahead and state your name for the record. Provide your comments. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Mary Lee Williams. And my comments are that it sounds from Q&A that you're not working with the Edwards Aquifer as far as the aquatic species that are endangered. We've been told that there are 7 aquatic species that are endangered in the Edwards Aquifer, as well as 1 that is threatened. And their recommendations are because of reduced spring flow, and they also state that there is groundwater runoff, increased pollution, and overdevelopment of areas, and they're protecting these. I would ask that this commission work more diligently with them on these, as well as the invertebrates that are living in the aquifer, because they are, like I said, endangered and threatened, and we've had this problem for a while. Also, there is a study, and I'm going to provide this information for you guys, but they're in Florida. They have a lot more stringent work than we do as far as helping the discharge and the sewer treatments, and they are coming up with all of these pharmaceuticals in the redfish, in the bloodstream, and in the meat. And though they thought they were doing their due diligence, just as we've been talking about tonight, as far as we're doing these high standards, et cetera, it is coming up over and over again in the animals that these pharmaceuticals are not being sufficiently pushed out in this treatment facility. And that is also huge because, again, this aquifer gives 2 million people not only their water, but there are still lots of wildlife and such that are being affected by this. And I think that's a very, very, very big problem that I'd like y'all to investigate and look at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I can take that from you. All right. Courtney McDowell.
The permitting process itself is flawed and ineffectual for use by normal citizens. The process itself seems designed to protect the developer. It seems that your minds are already made up and that our questions are falling on deaf ears. In support of this request, while we're doing everything possible, but it's making it very difficult for the impacted citizens to be in the know, your system itself is broken. The fact that Lennar knowingly moved the location of their proposed effluent discharge 1 mile upstream on its own property in order to avoid full disclosure and complete communication with neighboring properties is reprehensible, not to mention disgusting. There are citizens that will be affected that don't even know about this process. We have numerous elderly people, high percentage of seniors, and several other differently abled citizens. The process to submit questions reeks of ageism and ableism. And that's wrong. Especially with the question process ending tonight when new questions are being presented. People mentioned they didn't even know about this until 2 hours before the meeting. The TCEQ system online is barely navigable. It is complex. It is difficult to make comments or submit questions, let alone even find the permit application an appropriate place to do so. That is also unacceptable. Yet it also seems that maybe that's done by design. Additionally, even if you can manage to find it at all, the permit request itself is vague, providing little information that it would take a person, maybe with a degree in a related field, to even understand it. Luckily, we have several such people. Thank you. Luckily, we have several such people living along our pristine waterways who will continue to discover and uncover missteps and flawed moves that have been made throughout this permitting process. And we aren't going away, guys. We live here. Whether it's now or 5 years from now, after you've poisoned the Edwards Aquifer, more than 3 miles down the base of the stream, which you don't have to look at because it's not in the purview. We will still be here. The basic criteria of a public permit request is to notify all impacted parties. TCEQ and Lennar have failed miserably in doing so. Given the full details and accurate information on these impacts, there is not a single person who would agree to this, except perhaps the executives at Lennar, or whatever LLC this is. I'm confused on that.
All right, that's fine. Thank you. Up next is Robert Kuhn. Robert Kuhn. Did Ferdinand Gonzo come back in the room? All right, so our next group, we'll start with Tammy Poynton, Cynthia Massey, followed by Kelly McDowell, and Jerome Cohen. Tammy.
Hi, I'm Tammy. I own property right along the creek bed since 1978. My family has had it. And you're saying it's an average of 1 million gallons released. Average would be between 0 and 2 million. That's the average. So are we planning this treatment plant to handle 2 million gallons to be released if 1 million is the average? Because that's a big difference. That's kind of disturbing. My property is kind of in a flood zone. When we have bad water, it comes up really high. There are no banks, and it's past your 2 mile limit. So if I have significant discharge from that, it's going to flood my property. Without a doubt, it's going to flood my property. That is something that worries me. I'm against this 100%. I want it on record that I am totally against this. My business is right there too. If it got bad enough, it could impact my business. I'm over a bridge. I feel sorry for both sides, but I want to let y'all know that I am against this. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen to everybody, and I hope you take into consideration you would not want your family downstream from the plant at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia Massey.
Yes, I'm representing the city of Helotes, but my comment is just based on things that I've been hearing tonight. And specifically, according to the permit request, the treated effluent will be discharged via pipe to Helotes Creek, thence to Helotes impounded in Helotes Creek, thence to Helotes Creek again, thence to Calaver Creek, thence to Lower Rion Creek, and then to the San Antonio River Basin. So it appears that this effluent is going to be constantly running. It's going to make Helotes a constantly running creek, from what I'm reading. And Helotes Creek is 14 miles long, so only to examine the creek for 3 miles from the discharge point does not seem to me to be doing due diligence. Tammy is about 6.5 miles down from this discharge point, and I would really like for TCEQ to have their people go down the 14 and see where all of the creek beds are not, because there are a lot of areas where there are not creek beds on this 14-mile creek. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly McDowell.
I've spent almost 40 years of my career protecting lands for conservation. I started my career working for the citizens of a small community in Minnesota where pollution has caused damage to their creeks from dumping sewage treatment in there. This was almost 30 years ago. That's where I started my career. And most recently working in Florida, where the state of Florida is spending hundreds of billions of dollars to remove nutrients that aren't regulated from their rivers to protect their economy. I think most states have learned the calamity of this type of design where we dump sewage treatment into our waters is a failure that will ultimately cost our citizens millions of dollars in the future to fix. I'm disheartened to learn what little TCEQ does evaluate and consider in streams. They're not considering hospital waste, other contaminants, even carcinogens that go into these systems and go into the water because they simply don't have the authority by the legislature to regulate. But the things they do have authority to regulate, the practice of placing sewage treatment into streams has been approved by TCEQ almost 2,600 times in the state. And according to Save Barton Creek report, on 48 hill country streams, sewage plants which discharge into these streams fail 81% of the time since 2017. Meaning these plants fail. They fail. 81% of the time they're in failure. So they have good intentions, but these systems simply fail. It's my experience in my career. They've failed in other states. They will fail in Texas, and we will be paying for them in the future. These failures cause permanent changes to streams. They cause fish kills. They dump harmful levels of bacteria. They place nutrients that will cause algae blooms. This will not be a clear water stream in its future. It'll be filled with carpet algae, as found by most of the streams we're in hill country where sewage goes into the streams. This is not what you're hearing tonight. This is what's going to happen. This is what's going to be represented in the stream. My question to TCEQ is, how can you consider permits like Lamar Homes to continue to dump this and consider that it has de minimis impact according to the Clean Water Act? How can you do that when you know they're failing so often? How can you continue to consider permits and not reject them under this basis alone if you know they fail?
Thank you. Jerome Cohen.
Hi, my name is Jerome Cohen, and I actually live on Huntress Lane, and the creek goes straight through my property. I can't imagine that I live more than 2 miles from the ranch, because I have taken my daughters upstream many times when they were younger, and I was able to walk through many crystal clear creek beds and clear water that was flowing through our land. At this point, if you walked 2 miles, you had to have come into forks in the road of the creek. Which direction did you go? Did you go every direction? Because I can't imagine that you wouldn't have entered my property by traveling 2 miles. I can't fathom that. The next thing is why was I never notified? I wasn't notified by mail. I had nothing in my mailbox. I had no notification. I found out about this at 3 p.m. today. At 3 p.m. today, I come in totally unprepared. I am so honored that everybody here was so well prepared, because I wasn't well prepared. I'm not able to even fathom the amount of information that I could give you. The endangered species that are on my property, from the salamanders that thrive in the creek that are still there, the bass that I catch in my backyard that I can still eat. I can't be sure that this is going to be kept for my grandchildren to be able to enjoy. I didn't buy this land for me to live my life. I bought it for my family to live my life. And I bought it for me to enjoy and for my grandchildren to enjoy. And this isn't something that's going to be good for not only my property, but for my well water, for the water that I drink. Why couldn't I be notified? What is the process of notification? Why was I not notified? I feel as though that there's so many other things that we need to explore to determine what is the effects and how far we go with the discharge. You're saying discharge of 1.5 cubic feet per minute. That's a lot of discharge to me, but I'm not an expert. The other question I have is, how often have we heard of a corporation lie about the facts? So how can we be certain that the water they're taking out of the discharge is out of the discharge? Maybe they're taking the water out of the San Antonio tap water system that's already been. We don't know. There's no policing of these things. Who's going to be responsible for the health of the people that get affected by the tainted water that we're going to be subjected to?
All right, thank you. That's time.
Thank you.
We're going to call up our next group. I have Jennifer Webster, Marjorie Mance, and
Pat?
sorry, was that Marjorie?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so Jennifer Webster, Carrie McIntyre, Michael Schick, like the razor, and Dixie Watkins. So Jennifer Webster.
I didn't even prepare for this. I just thought I was going to talk a minute ago, but I would like for y'all maybe to, next time this happens, maybe do some research and see what the property values would be. And maybe tell the people who will be affected, instead of just letting them find out on Facebook. I would like to know how my property value is going to be affected, because I'm probably going to sell. After my parents buying a place in 64 and me being there forever, I'm probably just going to sell it, because I don't want to live next to a wastewater treatment creek or whatever it is. I'm also interested in that water's not, or the creek is not going to be saturated. So whenever it floods, where's that water going to go? Like Tammy said, where's it going to go? It already comes up close to my house. So now we're going to have another 1 million gallons in there, and I just don't know how it's going to affect us. I'm so disappointed in this.
Thank you. Carrie McIntyre.
Thank you guys for coming to answer all these questions, and thanks to the TCEQ for coming. And probably glad it rained, so it would have been a lot more people here than this. But so just to give everybody a visual of what 1 million gallons a day is going to look like, it's a pool that's about 267 feet long, like a football field, 50 feet wide, and 10 feet deep. So that much a day seems like a lot, especially if you're basing some of these considerations on the belief that, you know, there's not a lot of water in the creek sometimes because, well, we're in a drought most of the time. We wouldn't believe it right now. But that's a lot of water and a lot of impact, I would think, right? So I've also read that there's not a lot of endangered species in that area and further down. And to that, I would encourage you guys, come with me, come with us out into the creeks. If you go out on a night like tonight, it's full of frogs. And as a kid, I would go fishing, and we would get bass so big you could put your fist in their mouth. Snakes, fish, there's so much out there. And I don't think that y'all had the chance to actually see what might get impacted. And for you guys, I just, I hope your system is really good. And I'm sure that if it's not, there's a lot of people here who are willing to, allow you onto their property to check that discharge. So, thank you for designing the best system you can if you have to, but please make it as little of an impact as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And everyone, just as a reminder, even though you hear me call your name, before you start your comments, go ahead and state your name. These folks are going to go back to the agency and listen to the recording. It's going to be very important that they know exactly who's speaking and who to attribute those comments to. Up next is Michael Schick.
My name is Michael Schick, and my backyard abuts Quajolote Ranch, and anyone who assumes that my wife and I oppose Lennar's development of the Quajolote because it will spoil our beautiful view would be missing the main point. This isn't about not my backyard. It's about not my water faucet. It's not about don't ruin my view. It's about don't ruin my health. Now, if that sounds dramatic, then perhaps a history lesson is in order. In 1993, citizens of the little town of Hinckley, California, population 1900, experienced widespread and unexplained illnesses. And it turns out that one of the Pacific Gas and Electric facilities carelessly discharged wastewater into unlined ponds that percolated into groundwater within 2 square miles of the plant. And a courageous woman named Erin Brockovich blew the whistle and was instrumental in suing the company. PG&E settled the case for $333 million, the largest settlement ever paid in a direct action lawsuit in U.S. history to date. And here we are, exactly 30 years later, and we're facing the very real possibility that there could be just as easily another epidemic caused by emerging contaminants that you and the EPA isn't even sure about. But the widespread illnesses won't be in a little town like Hinckley. It will happen in the 7th largest city in America, San Antonio. And the illnesses won't be unexplained, for we already know in advance that the source will be a wastewater treatment plant on a ranch called the Quajolote. And this plant won't accidentally discharge treated wastewater on top of the ground. It will intentionally discharge millions of gallons a day that will eventually seep into our main source of drinking water. And this time it won't be 1,900 citizens in danger, but 2 million men, women, and children, not to mention millions of animals. And unfortunately, if we get hurt, we can't sue the government agencies and the elected officials who failed to keep us safe. And you can be sure that clever lawyers have figured out a way to insulate the very people who created this problem in the first place. The philosopher George Santayana said, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." What I want to know is this. Is TCEQ so willing to repeat history by risking the health of 2 million citizens it's supposed to be protecting? And why should we be condemned to a fate that is entirely avoidable? Don't Mess with Texas is one of the most successful anti-littering campaigns in our state's history. But if TCEQ allows 1 to 4 million gallons of treated sewage to litter the land, you could be sure that it will be one of the biggest messes Texas has ever seen. And do you really want that blood on your hands? TCEQ's mission statement says that you will, quote, strive to protect our state's public health, and that your goal is clean air, clean water, and the safe management of waste. Commissioners and staff of TCEQ, this is your chance to prove it by denying municipal operations permit requests. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, Dixie Watson.
Thank you. My name is Dixie Watkins. I've been living in the mid-valley of Helotes Creek on a couple of acres for 46 years. And I began my career on the public sector side of the coin as a direct response to the moratorium on the aquifer, which proved up that the recharge zone in that section of Helotes Creek, right above Highway 16, is one of the most sensitive pockets of the entire recharge zone. A lot of other people have addressed that, and I don't want to stand too much on that. But as a city planner that was in charge at that time of the environmental conservation part of the master plan, which after 4 years was voted down, the town really kind of put planning into its rearview mirror and embraced a much more engineering approach to development, leading to a lot of the rather narrow purview that a lot of the entities that we frustratingly have to deal with. It's not flooding, it's not this, it's not that. We do understand that. What I would like to say, though, is having worked in the trenches for over 40 years in the conservation development, Mayor Cisneros' appointment for the Open Space Advisory Board, 8 years of work on that and other committees and task forces, we continue to use the Helotes Creek Scenic Loop Corridor as a prototype for open space sensitivity. This is a de facto sustainability corridor, and we've used that time and time again very effectively for those of us who know it very well. For those of us who may just be seeing it, the steep slopes, the endangered species, the endemic species, the tree cover, the archaeological sites. It's why we live there. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. But the threat that we thought we saw coming from the south has come over from the north. What we're now seeing is a tipping point. That tipping point is a result of denser subdivisions that none of us really expected, and it's occurring in the ETJ, which is sort of a weak area for planning and zoning. What I would like to stress is the fact that we don't know what's going on inside the ground. I've had to re-drill my well 3 times. That's a quantity issue, not a quality issue. And we've not found out until after the fact, many times over these 4 decades, about the true details of possible impacts until after the fact. When the city brought on a golf course, the 5 wells that they drilled drew out all of our groundwater. And oops, they didn't know it until they studied it after the fact. I would like to see that this entity build upon the research that Southwest has done, and I'd like to say that between the Krim-Cal Divide and the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone, that a hydrogeologic study be reassessed and be done by an independent contractor to really look at what George Vinnie's thesis did for us to buy the Prop 1, Prop 3 lands that I've been involved in. That proved up the interconnectedness above the Edwards with the different groundwater strata. There's a lot more connectivity and a lot more sensitivity than anybody in this room thinks. It's just not been studied. Thank you.
All right, so our next group will start with Candy and Dutch Berkeley, who will be followed by Patricia and Art Terrazas, Bloom, and Randy Newman and Tracy Smith. So Candy and Dutch Berkeley.
Mr. Berkeley's agreed to let me talk. Okay, good evening. I'm Candy Rowan Berkeley, and I'm speaking here tonight for 8 families and 1 business located on Escondido Road and Helotes Creek. We represent more than 1 mile of the creek, and we are located approximately 1 mile from the proposed wastewater dumping site. The historic spring-fed Blue Hole swimming area is on my property. The Blue Hole is a well-known cultural landmark, having provided water to nomadic Native American tribes as far back as 15 to 20,000 years ago, and more recently to cattle drives in their stock in the 19th century. Our area, the Blue Hole, will be the first major depository of sewer effluent collection, rendering it no longer usable for swimming and recreational purposes, creating possible odors and attracting mosquitoes. The residents on Escondido Road and this part of the Helotes Creek have lived in this beautiful native area between 12 and 43 years. All of this time, we have been protecting the deer, turkeys, fireflies, squirrels, birds, and most importantly, the creek. All of us on Escondido Road use our wells as drinking water. All of us use the historic Blue Hole swim area and creek recreationally, as do our children and our grandchildren. Our pristine area of the creek has no invasive bamboo or ligustrum trees because of our diligence to keep the creek clean. The domestic and wildlife animals we watch over are physically well and produce offspring. Other than the residents that daily live in the area, there are thousands of guests at Los Escondido Celebration Center attending weddings, birthday parties, company picnics, memorial services, and other events that will be exposed to this water via the creek, the Blue Hole, or drinking the well water. We have many concerns about wastewater in our pristine creek. How will this affect our property values? Most of our neighbors are retired and their homes and lands are their most valuable asset. What flooding issues have been addressed, especially in our area after big rains? How will it affect people's health? How will it affect the wildlife and the domestic animals? How will it affect our living environment? How will it affect the aquifer drinking water for all of San Antonio? This is not just a Gray Forest or Helotes concern. This is a much larger issue of the city of San Antonio and its future drinking water. We have little trust with large businesses to do the right thing. Some of you may have heard of forever chemicals found in waters throughout the United States, in lakes, ponds, and in the fish from these waters. In the future, what kind of forever chemicals will we find in our drinking water? What forever chemicals will be in the Edwards Aquifer, which supplies water to all of San Antonio? And what kind of chemicals will we find in our bodies? We opposed this wastewater discharge permit and request that the permit be denied.
Thank you. Patricia and Art Terrazas.
Hi, this is Patricia
Terrazas, and most of the stuff that I have to cover has been covered, but I just want to make it part of the formal process. Our family has lived in Gray Forest for over 25 years, and our home backs up to the creek. We've enjoyed swimming and playing in the creek and the natural pool area over the years. Our children and our grandchildren have enjoyed these benefits. Now we're being told that we will have up to 1 million gallons of septic water released down our creeks and into our aquifer daily. One of our grandchildren is a heart recipient, so has low immunities due to anti-rejection medicine. We'll be unable to enjoy our creeks if this is allowed. In addition, we have been through 2 500-year floods and have never had the creek breach our property. When we have severe flooding in the future, will we have additional water from the release of the septic water that will increase the chances of flooding onto our property and residences? Will Lennar or the government be held responsible for this additional flooding risk posed? I calculated that there's, according to the internet, 8,000 gallons per month per household is what your average wastewater is. Times 3,000 homes is 24 million per month. And most of the time, families do all their laundry, all their work, everything on weekends. So it's really very logical that most of the wastewater is going to be coming through on weekends. And so my concern is that we're going to be pushing a lot more through on weekends when all of us are out there swimming in our waters. And that's when we're going to be all of a sudden hit with all this septic water that's coming through into our creeks as we're swimming and getting this into our bodies. I don't know one kid that's never swallowed water when they're swimming. So I don't know how you're going to limit your kids. You can swim, but keep your mouth shut because it's not drinkable water. Thank you.
Thank you. Emery Bloom? Emery Bloom. I'm sorry, this is B-L-U-H-M?
B-L-U-H-M.
Okay, just 1 second, please. All right, go ahead and state your name and provide your comments, please.
Good evening. My name is Emery Bloom. I'm the president of Scenic Loop Helotes Creek Alliance, which was formed years ago to protect our rural park-like neighborhood along Helotes Creek and along Scenic Loop Road from State Highway 16 to Babcock Road. We're a registered neighborhood with the City of San Antonio. I'm here today with neighbors, some of whom share fence lines with Quajolote Ranch Tract, many other residents who will be impacted downstream from this proposed project, and other folks whose livelihood depends upon maintaining a clean water supply in the greater San Antonio area. In addition to water quality, TCEQ has responsibility to the citizens of Texas to protect our air quality. All 3 available ingress-egress paths from the Quajolote Ranch to distant major thoroughfares are on single-lane roadways with stop signs. It is 5 miles from this site to Highway 16, 5.5 miles to Interstate 10, and 6 miles to Loop 1604. The Alamari NPO's 2040 roadway plan and the recently released 2050 roadway plan both contain no funded expansions of these 3 roadways. My questions are, when will a baseline air quality study be conducted at or near the proposed development? Will an air quality impact study be conducted to forecast the detrimental effects on air quality in this region caused by increased traffic originating from this development so far from a major arterial roadway? Will Lennar Homes of Texas fund the roadway expansion projects that will be necessary due to the inappropriate selection of this remote location for their development project? TCEQ has the oversight authority and the power to assess penalties against wastewater treatment plants in Texas that violate regulations and agreements. It is this authority that gives TCEQ its enforcement powers. But how strong is the enforcement power of TCEQ if those they regulate know TCEQ has no means by which to collect those penalties they assess? The following was obtained from TCEQ through a PIR request this year. Do you know how many wastewater penalties were assessed by TCEQ since 2016? 1,964. Does the quality itself demonstrate a developer's propensity to operate outside regulated parameters? Additionally, the citizens of San Antonio area have approved a sales tax rate hike that lasted for years to fund our local Edwards Aquifer Protection Program that was established in May of 2000. Within just a 5-mile radius of this proposed Guajolote development, the EAPP spent over $47 million of Bexar County taxpayer funds to protect over 5,000 acres just within 5 miles of this project. When will a geological or karst study be conducted on this property and be provided for review? What were the findings of the impact assessment through TCEQ's own EAPP? Has TCEQ requested an impact assessment of the proposed development and wastewater discharge from the City of San Antonio's EAPP? And what responsibility does TCEQ have to the citizens of Bexar County who forked over millions and millions of hard-earned tax dollars to protect this specific region from exactly what is before you today? Engineers and developers tell you what can or cannot be done.
Thank you.
Scientists tell you what should be done.
Up next is Randy Newman and Tracy Smith. Tracy Smith.
I'm Tracy Smith.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Tracy Smith, and I really wanted to address you all. He's still part of my thunder, by the way. At the time of the study conducted by the Save Barton Creek Association, reviews were made of the self-reported records of 48 municipal wastewater plants operating in 17 counties comprising the Texas Hill Country. The study covered over 3.5 years, and during which that time, 39 of 48 plants had 81% of at least one permit exceedance. And that means they were dumping something they weren't supposed to in the water. 7 of those 48 plants exceeded their permits by 501 days or more in that 1,277-day period. The 2 most egregious of the 10 located in Bexar County were Cibolo Valley plant that self-reported permit violations of 575 days, and the Cibolo Creek plant, which reported 731 days in this period. Cibolo Valley received a $14,000 fine, 1 formal action, and was inspected by TCEQ 1 time in 3.5 years. Cibolo Creek plant, with 731 days exceedance, received no fines, no formal or informal actions, and 2 TCEQ inspections in 3.5 years. Have you ever been tubing on the Guadalupe? That plant exceeded its permit 1,150 days out of 1,277. Fines? Nah. Formal and informal actions? Nope. This is just by TCEQ 4 times. Obviously, TCEQ has not been protecting and monitoring Texas's water quality adequately. TCEQ is relying on plants to self-report and regulate. Seriously? Cibolo Creek exceeded their permit 68 days out of the 100, and they were still in operation when this story was done. Again, no fines, no actions, nothing from the TCEQ. We've been told TCEQ doesn't even have a collection arm to enforce fines when and if they ever give them. Think about that one.
You have 1 minute.
So, given the lack of monitoring, enforcement, and no real consequences, why should we believe anything will change? I guess it remains to be seen, but for us, we unequivocally ask that this permit be denied. Thank you.
My name is Randy Newman. I live on a hill overlooking Helotes Creek. My property fronts the creek for 850 feet. Immediately beneath my living room is one of the Blue Hole Caves. The limestone in that cave interior is Edwards limestone, raised 200 feet above the creek in the valley floor below when the earth buckled, forming the Balcones Escarpment. This is a piece of rock taken from that cave. It's not representative of what lies below the area. It is what lies below the area. This rock is what underlies Helotes Creek and indeed most of the contributing zone, and is what makes this such a sensitive area. This rock is the reason the Edwards Aquifer Protection Plan has purchased or conserved 1/3 of the entire Helotes Creek Canyon for protection of the Edwards Aquifer. Why? because water can travel through that piece of rock at a velocity of up to a mile a day. This helps you to visualize just why our aquifer can recharge so quickly after a rainfall event like we're having this evening. But it's also the reason that the aquifer is so susceptible to pollution and contamination. That rock is the reason that 60 water well owners in the vicinity of Helotes Creek are concerned about sewer effluent contaminating our wells. Most of these wells are between 300 and 600 feet deep. They can become contaminated in a matter of hours due to the velocity with which surface water can penetrate that rock. This rock is the reason that high-density development like that being contemplated on the Quajolote tract is not appropriate for this area. If water can pass through this rock at a rate of 1 mile per day, then herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers, detergent, automotive waste, pet waste, and yes, sewer effluent containing fecal pathogens, heavy metals, endocrine disruptors, hormones, medicines of all kinds, and microplastics can pass through that rock at the rate of 1 mile per day. That rock does not lie. You don't have to be a scientist or have any special training to understand this issue. Your eyesight and your common sense tells you all you need to know. Remember, prevention is always less costly than pollution remediation. The choice here is for the TCEQ to side with the developer and opt for pollution, or stand with 2 million Texans and prevent it. As the state agency designed to protect the environment, the choice is clear.
Next group, we'll start with Jerry Post. Jerry Post will be followed by Aurelia Scharnhorst, Britt Coleman, and then Leslie Hicks.
I'm going to yield my time, Leslie Hicks.
All right, so then after Britt will be Stuart Birnbaum. But we'll start with Jerry.
My name is Jerry Foss, and I'm here to represent the City of Great Forest as the Mayor Pro Tem. We are here to express our concern that appropriate processes were not followed regarding this permit. We feel that Lennar Homes did not properly consider the City of Great Forest in the development of this project. As a result, our city and its residents did not have proper notice and standing, nor did Lennar Homes provide information to TCEQ to adequately understand the downstream features and communities in this process. We want to describe our standing and provide TCEQ with important information they need to know when considering this application. Helotes Creek for 90 years has been a prominent feature, natural feature in our neighborhood, and we are located just 2 miles from Quajolote tract. Our city owns and maintains 28 acres along the Helotes Creek. We have approximately 50 downstream houses located at least 60 feet or less to the Helotes Creek. Helotes Creek courses through our corporate limits as well as through our ETJ. The pristine clear water, when it is running, of this creek meanders through the heart of our city and has dams, springs, and wildlife, including endangered species. This area has multiple caves, sinkholes, sinking streams, with large rifts, cracks, and faults in the creek feeding directly into the Edwards Aquifer with no filtration. We have a certificate of convenience and necessity for water within our authority. We have passed a resolution condemning the issuance of a discharge permit of the Quajolote tract. This creek has multiple dammed areas that are used by our residents for recreation. Residents of all ages, including small children, use this dammed area as a local swimming hole, and they've done this since before the 1950s. So please see the pictures that you are noticing here. That's of our creeks. That's of our swing holes. Our city's water system is also housed less than 1.5 miles from this tract. We rely on our own superior rated water wells, and numerous residents along the corridor have their own private wells. The potential threat of contamination to our city's water, our water supply, could be catastrophic to the residents of the City of Great Forest. We believe that the volume of 1 million gallons average per day, perhaps more, could impact our roads, bridges, low water crossings, dams, and residents along the creek. Finally, the City of Great Forest believes that there will be more than de minimis impacts allowed by TCEQ and the Clean Water Act to the pristine nature of Helotes Creek. We ask that TCEQ address our concerns regarding failure to provide our city with proper notice and review the impact to our city, our infrastructure, our ecosystem, and the pristine nature of the Helotes Creek before any further consideration of this permit is allowed. Thank you.
Thank you. Aurelia Starhorse.
Good evening. My name is Aurelia Scharnhorst. I'm here as a member of the City Council of Gray Forest to represent the interests of the citizens of my city. As mentioned by Dr. Post, the Mayor Pro Tem of Gray Forest, we believe that the average effluent of 1 million gallons per day, up to 4 million, could compromise the integrity of city-owned roads, bridges, low water crossings, dams, residences along the creek. My questions to you are, how will Lennar Homes and TCEQ ensure that these flows will not compromise these structures? How will you ensure that the 60-plus homes along the creek will not be at a greater risk from flooding? How will the springs and karst features along the creek not be impacted from elevated flows and compromise our city drinking water? The City of Gray Forest and its citizens treasure the natural beauty of our city, its wildlife, and our creeks. We value our superior water system. That's why in 2009, the City of Gray Forest worked with the City of San Antonio to put in place a conservation easement on the Madla Natural Area due to its strategic location for the protection of the Edwards Aquifer. The City of Gray Forest believes the impact of the proposed plant on the pristine nature of Helotes Creek will be greater than the de minimis allowed by TCEQ and the Clean Water Act. We would request that TCEQ and or Lennar Homes fund an engineering study to ensure that the City of Gray Forest infrastructure and drinking water will not be impacted by the proposed water treatment facility referenced in the permit. My final question is, to what degree may Lennar Municipal Operations LLC or the TCEQ be held liable if the proposed plant is found to be the cause of pollution of the Trinity or Edwards aquifers or Helotes Creek or our water system? Thank you.
Thank you. Britt Coleman.
Hi, my name is Britt Coleman. I'm president of Bear Audubon Society, and I'm here speaking on behalf of our 2,000 members against the permit. It's clear from the Q&A that there's not been enough planning at this point to approve this permit. The developer has not engineered the land for the number of houses, nor engineered the sewer lines or the lift stations, so we don't know really what's going on. Questions about plant failure have not been answered or addressed except by saying that they will self-report and that there's, you can have a FOIA to come up with the information. It's unfortunate that the TCEQ can't take a holistic approach to the mission of protecting Texas waterways. The permit process doesn't take into account stormwater runoff or water quality. The real damage isn't the wastewater treatment plant, because I honestly believe that they'll probably do a fairly good job of keeping that water clean, except for when there's a failure. But where the real problem is going to come is when Lennar starts the construction process and they bring in the D9 cats and they scrape everything off of the surface of that 3,000 acres, and then it rains, and then you have stormwater runoff into the creek. And that's where the real problem is going to start. So it is not in your purview to consider the larger issue of the entire construction process. I know you only have to look at the wastewater treatment plant, but that doesn't mean you can't. That doesn't mean you cannot take that into consideration. You have an opportunity to look to the future. You have an opportunity to change the mission of TCEQ, and it sits in front of you today. And I certainly hope you consider that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stuart Birnbaum.
Took me by surprise. My name is Stuart Birnbaum. I am a citizen of Helotes, and much of what I would have said has been said tonight. So I'm going to try to place into context what 1 million gallons a day is for people. So it's been raining. It's been raining for perhaps a day and a half. We drove here along Scenic Loop, went through several low water crossings that were already 6 or 8 inches deep. It is predicted that we'll get between 3 and 5 inches of rain, hopefully, over the next several days. 1 million gallons, what does that mean? If you take 1 million gallons, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, 1 inch of rain falling over 1 acre is 27,165 gallons. Divide 1 million by that, you get 36.8 inches of rain on an acre. That means the discharge area will be receiving, on average, just shy of 37 inches of rain every single day. And that's assuming the discharge area is 1 acre. So my questions relate to the discharge area. There is no information in the application that I read that described the discharge area. There's no map of it. It's just a point on the map. Nothing about the structure. There's a 6-inch pipe that's going to be moving water up gradient to the discharge point. Are there going to be baffles? Is there a pond there? How is that water going to be constrained before it's released into the creek? The other issue about the creek, yes, it's a bedrock creek. But has anyone done the calculations at TCEQ or at your company to see what the impact of the flow rate will be in the creek? If it's a very narrow canyon-lined creek, 1 million gallons is going to be a significant amount of water. So the 1+ cubic feet per second doesn't really tell the whole story. I'm going to end by thanking the people from TCEQ and from your company. I know this is hard. It's not fun for you. We're not here bashing you personally, although it may feel like it. It's the process. The laws are not adequate to protect Texas citizens. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so our next group, and again, I apologize in advance. I believe this is Elizabeth Ann Paparin, and then Tim Santee, Jerry and Karen Muldowney. That was Jerry and Karen. Okay. So Elizabeth Ann, Tim Santee, Timothy Roan, and Donald Nettle. So Elizabeth Ann.
Good evening. My name is Mary Lynette Munson. My mother, Ann Toporn, has asked me to speak on her behalf, so I will be reading her statement. She lives on Sam's Ranch Road, which is just outside of Helotes. My great-grandfather, William B. Krimkoff, purchased the Rancho de la Helotes in 1885, and it has been in my family for 138 years. I cherish the memories of family picnics, barbecues in the meadows along that Helotes Creek, where the springs used to shoot up into the air. The last Indian fight in Bexar County occurred on that ranch in 1871. The nearby divide between Helotes and Leon Creek watersheds is named the Krimkoff Divide for my great-grandfather. The land is part of me and my family. I live on the far northwest corner of Sam's Ranch. It is the first entry point coming off Quajolote. So first of all, she was not notified. None of us were. My brother and myself live on that ranch. Nobody notified us of this. We found out last week. You could not possibly have watched our creek bed because we would have noticed and you would have been trespassing. Nobody contacted us for y'all to come examine the creek, how narrow it is, what the impact that's going to be coming down there, the erosion, all of that. Nobody came to talk to us. So what was an idyllic place where turkeys and deer are plentiful and where my family lives for so long will soon become a drainage ditch for someone else's sewer. I am angry at the unfairness of this situation. I am saddened that the creek that my children swam in will no longer be safe for my grandchildren or my great-grandchildren to swim in. I am angry that something like this could even be considered. I am concerned about the wildlife, our cattle, our dogs, drinking the runoff in that creek. I worry about the noise and the odor of the sewer plant. I worry about the algae that will build up in the stream and if the water becomes stagnant and the stink. Recently, I was shown a map of a location from the sewer plant on the Quajolote. I noticed there is a 50-foot drainage easement running along the southern border of Quajolote from west to east. It appears to just end at the southeast corner of my property. I would like to know just what's going to be coming down that easement. Is it stormwater, sewer effluent, raw sewage? What? How can it just end at the Quajolote property line and dump its contents onto my property, onto Sam's Ranch? It's like you throwing your trash bag into her yard. We have been excellent stewards of this land for over a century, and to see it defiled in this way, especially the pristine Helotes Creek, to be so disrespected and polluted is unthinkable. I thought the Texas Commission of Environmental Quality existed to protect the people of Texas from pollution. It seems that y'all are promoting it. As one of the older ranching families in the community, I strongly urge the TCEQ to do its duty and deny this permit. Leave those of us who love this land and continue to care for it. I'll remind you again, 138 years the family has lived on that land. Do not let developers wreck our environment or our heritage in the name of profit. Please deny this permit.
Thank you. Tim Santee?
I'm Tim Santee, and I'm a resident of Gray Forest and a member of the City Council. I echo the sentiments of our Mayor Pro Tem and my fellow council member that we oppose this permit for the reasons that they stated before. Just want to talk about a couple of other things that are very important. And before I do that, I want to thank you all for being here. And I know you have a tough job to do, as Stuart said, and thank you for coming. I know there's a lot of questions. So my point to the whole thing is really, there's a reason why the City of San Antonio, the Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance, and all the other entities have consistently bought up land, as many mentioned, around this whole area. There's a reason why there's a Southwest research study that I understand you all don't even have, that studied this for many years and talked about the geology of this area, the endangered species, but more importantly, just how that geology affects the Edwards Aquifer at large, which is not just us. Like someone said earlier, it's not because it's in my backyard, it's because it's all of our water quality. We have our own superior water system. There's a reason it's superior, because there are no contaminants in it. And the reality of it is no matter how hard you try, no matter how good the equipment is, it will fail. And there are things, as you admitted, that we don't even test for, we don't even check for. Forever chemicals, pharmaceuticals, go down the list. Things that are in that water. I understand that something has to be done with it, but there are options. And for us to say that this is the option that we're going to approve without doing more research is unfathomable. And I don't understand why we would allow that to go through. So my question to you is, why can't you consider that and look at this holistically with the study from Southwest Research, with all of the other information that's out there, and understand what is going to be best for this area. This is an environmentally sensitive area for the entire city of San Antonio because of the permeation of the rock we talked about. You don't see the city of San Antonio buying up conservation easements in other parts of town. The reason is those areas are not as environmentally sensitive to the aquifer. And so the reality is we need to consider all those things before we just say, well, that's all we have to work with, that's the regulations, and just throw our hands up and approve the permit. And I'm not questioning the folks here because it's not ultimately their decision, but I question Lennar Homes. I don't trust them because they have a bad track record of doing things not in the right way. And when they say, oh, well, we'll apply for this permit if you accept it, and then we'll apply for another permit to do something that's better, I don't believe it, and I don't think anybody in this room does either. And I think that we need to consider that. You're setting a dangerous precedent letting them put a sewer treatment plant in this area, because it won't be the last one. And pretty soon the whole area will be contaminated. So you all need to think about that before you make the decision. And I appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Timothy Rowe?
I'm Don Nettle. My wife and I moved to Great Forest.
Hold on. You're Don Nettle?
Yes.
And then you're Timothy Rowe? And then who's in? Okay. Let's.
No worries. I'll make it quick. I'll take 3 minutes tops.
Okay. 3 minutes is a good target. Go ahead and state your name for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Timothy Rowan. I live at 21765 Scenic Loop Road. Property that, as my distant cousin over there, Ms. Topwarn, said, has been in the family since 1885 from our great-great-grandfather, William Krimpkoff. Indeed, the stretch of Scenic Loop is called Krimpkoff Divide, as mentioned, and it divides the local watersheds of the Helotes Creek and the Leon Creek. Watersheds that are now under attack by America's largest home builder, second largest home builder, Lennar Homes. Lennar Homes, who has a lengthy track record of over 29 environmental violations as of 2021, with fines exceeding $7.6 million. Lennar Homes, who builds into their $5.8 billion operating income enough cash to pay any environmental fine. Lamar Homes, who pays lawyers and lobbyists around the nation millions to advocate for their interests, while Joe average school teacher, me, nurses, my wife, and my kids, and other concerned little people do our best on a rainy Tuesday to convince you that this is a bad idea. And what we want to say is this: 3,000 homes on 11,000 acres with a self-monitoring sewage system putting up to 1 million gallons of effluent daily into Helotes Creek is a bad idea. Our well lies within 1.5 miles of the proposed treatment facility discharge point. This says nothing of the increased traffic in the area, the 30-foot easement proposed for the water line that comes through my development, which would eradicate the few oak trees we have up on the top of the hill. And I guess the days of swimming in Gray Forest Pool, which is in Helotes Creek, would be over forever. I urge this commission to not rubber stamp another environmental disaster in the making. Take a drive to the north end of Babcock Road and look around. See this area. It's pristine. Close your eyes and imagine 3,000 homes. And my questions: do you know there's human activity in Helotes Creek? What's the fines for violations of requirements? If flooding, light pollution, traffic is not in the scope of this permit request, who reviews those parts? And finally, what happens when my well is fouled? Why permit first and design later? Thank you.
Thank you.
Still Don Nettle. My wife and I moved to Great Forest in 1994 to escape the spread of businesses and things around the home we had in Off Northwest Military in San Antonio. Our backyard borders on Helotes Creek, and we're at the lowest point in Great Forest by the creek. The creek has flooded our home 7 times since we moved there in 1994. 3 of the floods, water entered into our garage and our home. We had to take parts of our walls out to air it out. I can't imagine the damage, extra damage that would be caused if that was sewage water. Also, we could no longer enjoy the swimming in the natural pool in Great Forest Park. While Helotes Creek is now dry most of the time due to development draining our aquifer resources. Sorry about my throat. It does flood with heavy concentrated rainstorms. Daily dumping of 1 million gallons of treated sewage water in the creek will increase the possibility of flooding damage to our home property, and pollute our drinking water. I guess one of the questions I have is, as I understand it, LLC means limited liability corporation, is that right? Is that what it stands for? And this will be an LLC that operates the plant. So will it have funds for the damages that occurred to people like myself? Or is there a possibility that they could be liable for such damages, or other than the fines that the agencies have? Is there anything for that? Any fund to be built up in case of damages? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. What was your name?
Christopher Rivera. Was this the last group?
No, I got about 20 folks still to go. I don't think I called your name, though.
Oh, yeah. My paper's right over there.
Okay, we'll get to you. Thank you. All right, our next group, we'll start with Shane Russell, followed by Felipe Garcia, and then Mai Fermeef Moore, and then Xavier Alvarez. So Shane Russell. Shane Russell? How about Felipe Garcia? Are you Felipe?
I'm not Javier Alvarez.
Oh, okay. Is Felipe here? Okay. Thank you. Is this Meef Moore or Mike Moore, MYFE? All right.
It's Myfie. While the TCEQ watched in San Antonio, I live across the street from the San Antonio River. The city of San Antonio dumps 4.5 million gallons every single day into the San Antonio River by the Whitty Museum. Every day. There are no filters on the planet that will filter out biologicals or drugs, which is in urine. So Uncle Schmud takes his thyroid pill, or somebody else does whatever drug they do, and they urinate. There's not a filter on the planet that will get it out of the water. So that will be flowing through Gray Forest and Scenic Loop. In addition, thank you TCEQ, there are no signs in San Antonio up and down the San Antonio River warning people how filthy the treated sewage water is. I see children and families playing there in the river every single day. I got to thinking about it. I thought, I'm going to have this water tested. Oh my God, we're talking diphtheria, E. coli, you name the worst drugs and diseases there are on the planet, and it's in the San Antonio water. Thank you TCEQ for watching and making sure that San Antonio keeps the water clean. And as far as endangered species dying and people not having clean water in their pools, I would rather go somewhere a little farther and remind you, my nephew, Hansford White, is dead this past October because he ate fish out of the Gulf of Mexico. If San Antonio's dumping 4.5 million gallons into the rivers, and y'all are wanting to dump another million, every little town is watching what we do, and TCEQ is standing idly by, and my nephew's dead because of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Javier Alvarez.
Thank you. I'm Javier Alvarez, and I really thank the environmental department that you are in. But I have a criticism. To me, it sounds that you have a tremendous job. You have a very good opportunity. You could be my hero for all these guys. Yes, and for me. But I see no teeth from you. You avoid the questions. Someone else. If you cannot answer, bring the boss. And I will question him. We will question him. Please do your job. It's the only thing that I could ask for from you. Yes? Think about what are you going to tell your children or grandchildren when they have their way and polluted our area. to you, find another job. Please. If I was there, I would be saying, look, all these folks. Yes, I moved to Great Forest because I found paradise. I lived in very big cities before. Yes, go and look Great Forest, walk in the creeks. I do that every day. I have 2 dogs, and we have a very good time. And yes, my suggestion is find another job or go to Florida.
Thank you. Our next group, we'll start with Nathan Levy, and then Tim Bone, Todd Hutchinson, and Annalisa Peace.
Annalisa's waving her time.
All right, so then Nathan Glady.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Nathan Glady, and I serve as the technical director for the Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance, GIA for short, located here in San Antonio. GIA is a nonprofit organization that promotes effective broad-based advocacy for the protection and preservation of the Edwards Aquifer, its springs, watersheds, and the Texas Hill Country lands that sustains it. GIA has already submitted written comments on behalf of our 56 member organizations, and we will be seeking a contested case hearing regarding this permit application if it ultimately moves forward. GIA would also be requesting that our organization be recognized as an effective party with standing to represent our members who are adjacent landowners. Tonight, I'd like to highlight the following and voice the following concerns to the record. There's been talk and conversation about the capacity for beneficial reuse, and the applicant, Municipal Operations, has agreed or has seeking the opportunity to implement beneficial reuse. But I'd like to have more teeth on that. And GIA would like to urge the applicant to utilize a one water approach for the wastewater treatment system, incorporating beneficial reuse of the effluent and limiting the need to discharge the effluent into Clovis Creek. In the event the applicant is unable to reuse all the wastewater generated, it is GIA's recommendation that the applicant purchase the necessary lands for such and obtain the required Texas Land Application Permit from TCEQ. Also, I'd like to mention, I know there's been talks about where they have to seek a TPDS permit first before Chapter 210 reuse. I have heard rumors about that's not the case anymore, and they can actually apply for both at the same time. I've stated that before at different TCEQ meetings, and I'm still waiting to hear a formal response from TCEQ on the record, so I'm stating that back on the record to find an answer about my question. Also, I'd like to note about the impacts of surrounding wells. It's been noted today. With my personal research with GIA, I've noted that there's 60 water wells found within the Texas Water Development Board's database within a 1.5 mile radius. Out of the 60 wells, 55 of these wells were noted to have a domestic household purpose. The volume of wells located in this close proximity to the discharge point en route poses a serious concern of cross-contamination with the local groundwater supply that these well owners rely on to meet their needs. Further, many of these wells are not required to regularly test for the water quality of their wells, subjecting them to potential public health concerns that result from cross-contamination from this Quajolote Ranch wastewater treatment effluent. Also, noting about the cumulative impacts, I know this talk about the Southwest Research Institute report has been on and ongoing for this whole conversation. The reason why we're bringing it up is because the case study is directly within the Helotes Creek watershed. It does an analysis of TLAP, TPDS systems, and OSSF within it, and I highly encourage you reading about this. Because currently there's no TPDS permit currently existing in this area, meaning that the Quajolote Ranch wastewater treatment facility would be the first of its kind having this type of permit within the area itself. TCEQ has previously stated that in evaluating wastewater permits, they consider baseline conditions in the receiving streams, the physical and hydrological characteristics of the streams, water body uses, and the associated water quality standards that protect those uses. We trust that TCEQ will consider these stated factors when ultimately deciding on this TPDS application and will adopt standards that align with others in Central Texas. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Before we move on, Nathan, at the start of his comments, requested a hearing and asked for standing in the hearing. And I know that Nathan knows this, but for the benefit of everyone in the room, all requests for a contested hearing have to be made in writing. It's not enough to come up to the microphone and state that orally. If you desire to request a hearing, you should make sure that you do that in writing. Up next is Tim Bone.
For the sake of public information, when would that be? You said the comments end tonight.
Well, I'll talk about that before we close tonight.
Thank you very much, sir.
Todd Hutchinson. Todd Hutchinson. All right, so our next group will be Terry McWilliams, followed by George Rice, followed by Rhodes Reynolds Cannon, and then Tanya Granados and Seth Granados. So Terry McWilliams.
I had prepared some comments for tonight, but thanks to all my Great Forest neighbors where I've lived for over 20 years, that they have made the comments that they have made, as well as my city council people and the Mayor Pro Tem. What I am really concerned about is not only this wastewater project and where it's located, but what the runoff will possibly do to my pristine neighborhood, my historic neighborhood of over 100 years. I enjoy walking through my neighborhood with my elderly dog about a mile each day. I enjoy when our creeks are full and we can enjoy that water. My husband and I were married in this swimming hole in Gray Forest. That meant so much, that meant the world to me. I'm concerned about the runoff of the water coming down Scenic Loop Road. No one seems to care about Scenic Loop Road. It's 2 lanes, and I think they already have 5,000 cars a day passing through there, thanks to the development that's happening on Scenic Loop, near to where the Guajolote Ranch will be, and other developments down Babcock Road using Scenic Loop as a shortcut between Highway 16, Babcock Road, and I-10. The runoff and all the pesticides that it would carry, the petroleum products, the fecal pathogens, the soil and sediment and trash that would run directly into my neighborhood. Lennar has not been a responsible neighbor. That's been proven tonight. And what I'm concerned about is that eventually this drought will end and we will have rain again, and what that runoff will do to our low water crossings to where I am just a block away from the low point in Gray Forest next to my neighbor Don Nettle. I really ask that you stop this wastewater project, stop the development of Lennar, and stop the overusage and population growth that's happening in our beautiful area of Great Forest and the surrounding neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you mind? Hold on. Can you come back and give me your name, please?
Pardon me?
Come back and give me your name, please.
Terry McWilliams.
Thank you. Up next is George Rice.
Hi. Hello, I'm George Rice. Thank you for the opportunity to comment this evening. I'm a hydrologist, but you don't need to be a hydrologist in order to understand that it's a bad idea to discharge sewage effluent into a stream that recharges a source of our drinking water. Now, in my opinion, there are a number of problems with the permit application, but I'm just going to mention one of them. The application does not address a wide class of contaminants, as has been mentioned earlier, that we know will exist in the sewage effluent. Those are the remnants of pharmaceuticals that pass through human bodies. There's a wide range of pharmaceuticals that will be in the sewage effluent, and these can include things like antidepressants, pain medications, hormones associated with birth control, and others. So even if the sewage treatment plant works exactly as it's designed, there will still be serious problems associated with it. But, as it has been mentioned earlier, we know that sewage treatment plants don't always work as designed. Things go wrong. So from time to time, it's quite likely that the plant will be discharging either partly treated sewage into Helotes Creek or raw sewage into Helotes Creek. So, to repeat what I said earlier, I think it's just a bad idea to discharge sewage effluent into a creek, into a stream like Helotes Creek, and I ask that TCEQ reject this permit application. Thank you.
Thank you. Rose Reynolds Cannon, Tanya Granados, and Seth Granados. All right, our next group, Raquel Holbrook, followed by Brendan Gibbons, followed by Charles Blank, and then Richard Ailes. So, Raquel Holbrook. Brendan Gibbons.
He submitted written comments.
Thank you. Charles Blank.
Same.
Thank you, Nathan. Richard Ailes. A-L-L-E-S. Eric Allman. Eric will be followed by Richard Castillo. And then back to Ferdinand Gonzel.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Eric Allman with Perales, Allman and Ice here on behalf of the Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance and the City of Great Forest. First, I do want to thank the applicant and the TCEQ personnel for coming here and being at this meeting to listen to the public. We do appreciate it. This permit should be denied. As an initial matter, the notice was not sufficient to adjacent landowners. As you know, under commission precedent and practice, adjacency extends to those landowners that are not affiliated with the applicant. In this case, the facility, as well as the land that's been claimed as adjacent, is all part of Lennard's common plan of development and all associated with the same entity. In fact, it's being treated as the same property for purposes of Lennard's agreement with SAWS. So adjacent landowners are those that are adjacent to the development. They did not receive notice of this application as was required. We are also concerned at the impacts this will have upon surface water quality. The recreational and aquatic life uses are not protected. There's been talk here tonight of emerging contaminants, and while EPA has not issued specific limits for emerging contaminants, the general criteria of TCEQ's surface water quality standards requires a consideration of all materials that will have an impact upon aquatic life, including emerging contaminants. There are also endangered species present downstream. Endangered species which the Texas representative of the EPA would undergo a case-by-case review when issuing permits. That has not been done in this case. Furthermore, we are concerned at the impacts this would have upon groundwater. As has been noted, there are groundwater wells in the area that are sources of water supply for municipalities and individuals, as well as karst and vertebrates that would be impacted within the groundwater supply in the area. The buffer zone for odor is not adequate in this case. There will be treatment units with zones of anaerobic activity within them that do not have the required 500-foot buffer as required by the TCEQ rules. And lastly, the Commission's regionalization policy is not met with regard to this application. The San Antonio water system is fully capable of supplying the water treatment to be proposed, and so this plant is not necessary. Thank you. We appreciate your consideration of the comments tonight.
Thank you. Richard Castillo.
Hi, good evening. My name is Richard Castillo. I live on Huntress Lane. So I found out about this this afternoon, and so I am fairly unprepared, but just being in this room for the past few hours, I think every person in the city of San Antonio would be shocked like I am right now. So I heard about this tonight, but just commonsensically speaking, you can just sense the urgency in this room. It's on y'all, it's on your department. I know you have a job that has limitations, I understand that, but you also have a responsibility to a higher order that is to the goodness to each other, right? We're talking about the world and green energy and all this other crud. You know, put it to use, put it to true application with your abilities. If you're hamstrung because you have limits, push the limits. Make a difference, okay? In 1991, Ronald, I'm going to say his last name wrong, Puke or P-U-C-E-K Jr. You remember that guy in 1991? What did he do? He bought a Yeah, he bought a farm. He bought a 500-acre piece of property, and he drilled a well, right? The well produced a ton of water, a quarter of the city of San Antonio's water supply, right? So he'd pump this water out, he'd run it through his catfish farm, and he had the best catfish. But the city of San Antonio said, whoa, wait a minute, we're losing a quarter of our water just down the drain, right? So it was in 1991 when he did that. It was in 2000, the year 2000, when the city of San Antonio finally bought out his water rights and paid $30 million for it. That's a long time, right? Boom, boom, water running down the drain. Okay, so the gentleman before me spoke about adjacent property rights. That's great. But this water is for everybody. It's adjacent to everyone in the city. It's substrate. It's under the water. So my question has to do with the geological study that was done or not done. Official question is what was done and what was not done, and who signed off on it. Which geological organization wrote down, hey, this is good to go. I would like to know who that is. Okay. I think that's pretty much it. It's just I'm so proud of the people here in this room, the people that spoke in this room, learned about the history of where I live. I've been on this property that I live on for about 20 years, 25 years. We drilled a well. The first well went dry about 10 years after we had the property because of development around the area. So we had to drill another well. I went all the way down. What they told me is, I went as far down as you can go. So you can go all the way down, Mr. Steele. Don't go shallow. We cased it all the way to the bottom because we wanted good, clean water. And that water is not just underneath my well. It's in the hills. It's coming from somewhere. It's not just this, okay, I'm good on this little piece of property. It's the substrate. It's flowing under us all. And we need that water collectively. Do the right thing.
Thank you. Ferdinand Gonzel, G-A-E-N-Z-E-L, Ferdinand. Robert Kuhn, K-U-H-N, Robert. Christopher Rivera.
Hi, my name is Christopher Rivera. I grew up out in Great Forest all my life. 26-year-old now. As you saw in some of those pictures they held up, I'm actually one of those little kids, believe it or not. And I remember when, after it floods, I would go out in the creek and swim in it, play in it, walk around, seeing all the snakes, stuff like that. Everything that comes out, and that comes all the way from upstream. I remember my dad growing up telling me from upstream that magical fish are coming out, big ones, and I mean huge bass. And there's also spring waters there that I would drink out of. Nice, fresh, clean spring waters. And just coming from my heart as a kid, growing up, my future, when I decided to move back to Great Forest, don't pass this. Because it will seriously harm our ecosystem in that area. But that's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Rivera was the last person I had that signed up to provide comments at tonight's meeting. At this time, is there anyone who has not yet had the opportunity to provide comments that would like to do so? Wave your hand at me and actually start making your way up to the microphone. Last call, anyone who's not yet had the opportunity to provide comments at tonight's meeting that would like to do so. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the process moving forward as we close. Tonight is the end of the comment period, so after tonight, TCEQ staff will go back to...
Stand up, please.
Hold on. Let me wrap up and then we can address that. Hey, I'm not that short. After tonight, TCEQ staff will go back to the agency and they'll review all the comments that have been submitted on this application. They'll start working on that response to comments document. The response to comments document, as Bobby mentioned earlier, could take up to 60 days. It'll be mailed to everyone who's on the mailing list for this application. If you provided comments, either in writing or tonight during the comment period, you're automatically added to the mailing list. On your registration sheet, if you check the box, please add me to the mailing list. They get you on the mailing list as well. So the RTC will arrive to you in the mail and it'll respond to all the comments that have been submitted on this application. Attached to the response to comments document will be a cover letter that explains the decision that was made by the executive director, and it will establish the final 30-day deadline for folks to request a contested hearing if you've not already done so. So that response to comments, again, will set off the final 30-day period for folks to request a hearing on the application. I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight. Appreciate your patience. Appreciate the comments that you provided. Please be careful going home. We will be here another 5, 10, 15 minutes as we pack up our equipment, clean up after ourselves. If you'd like to come up and chat with us further, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, be careful going home, and hope that you have a great rest of your week. Thank you.